Hi there and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Aaron Shu. Since I've had a lifetime of disability, do I have some lessons that I can honestly say I have learned as a result of that disability? The answer is yes. And in this video, I will share with you some of those lessons. Lesson number 1. Miracles still do exist. When I was born, no one was really expecting me to have a disability. It was a shock to everyone. My parents were also told that I would never grow to be the age of 5, and that if I barely somehow made it to the age of 5, I would not be able to do anything. And I mean anything at all. But here we are. I am way beyond the age of 5. I'm alive, I'm doing well, I can talk, I can move a little bit, as you can see. And the nature of my disability didn't allow me to do these things. And it just goes on to show that God is still in the business of performing miracles. Even when medicine says this is not possible, when science said this is not possible, God still allowed my story and my testimony to be different. Lesson number 2. Wallowing in self-pity will not change anything. Let's be real, guys. It's only natural for human beings to feel a little bit sorry for ourselves when things don't go according to plan, or when we find ourselves in a sticky situation that we never expected to find ourselves in. We start to ask ourselves, why me? I fell into that rabbit hole of feeling sorry for myself. And let me tell you, it's a slippery slope. At some point, you just have to come to terms with things and keep it moving. Lesson number 3. Not everyone is going to be on your team, and that's okay. When I realized that I was a little bit different from my peers and my colleagues, I started thinking to myself, people actually do treat me a little bit different. I also started noticing that people naturally thought that I was not capable of doing certain things, and this was reflected in the way that people would talk about me, or the way people would treat me, or how people would avoid giving me certain tasks. And what this did to my psyche is I started thinking, I have to prove to them that I am worthy of something. And I started to overperform in a bid to please people. Even though my performance would impress some people, no matter what I did, no matter how much I excelled, there were still people who never really looked beyond my disability. All they would see was a guy in a wheelchair, and it didn't matter how good I was at something, how competent I was, how much I excelled, I was still the guy in a wheelchair. And this made me realize that you are just not going to impress everybody. And it's better to just stick to your plan and do things that you need to do, and stop thinking that you are going to perform your way into getting validation from other people. The 4th lesson that I learned was acceptance is key. There were times when I couldn't come to terms with my own disability, and I subjected myself to a lot of pressure. Instead of focusing on developing and growing as a person, my focus was elsewhere. I, growing up as a believer, obviously knew that God is a healer, and I knew that God can perform miracles. And I became so obsessed with trying to figure out how I could get out of the wheelchair and be like everybody else. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with trying to grow spiritually, but the things that I was doing, all the prayers and the meditation and reading the word, it really wasn't coming from a genuine place of loving God, but it was more like I was trying to figure out what the recipe was so that I could receive a miracle. When I did eventually accept my situation, my disability, things became better. So sometimes, instead of focusing on what you need to do in order to fit in better, it's very important to accept things for what they are and keep on enjoying and doing life. Lesson number 5. Master your own journey and stop comparing yourself to other people. The reality is, when you have a disability, your path tends to be a little bit different from that of your peers and your age mates. Sometimes things just move a little bit slower. When I started comparing myself to my friends and my peers and be like, oh, wait a minute, everybody else already has a job, their careers are going on pretty well, everyone has managed to accomplish this and that, and I still haven't because things were moving a little bit slower for me, I really robbed myself of my own joy. Comparing myself to other people completely wrecked me. And it was a lesson that I learned in life that the more you compare yourself to other people who seem like they are way ahead of you, you are only heaping tons of stress and anxiety on yourself. And it's really not good for anyone. The best thing you can really do is to master your own journey, walk in your own purpose, and ensure that you are doing the best that you can and leaving the rest to God. The next lesson that I learned because of my disability is resilience is key. When you have a disability and if you are living in an environment that is not really built to accommodate people with disabilities, everything is a struggle. Yes, there were situations that I faced in my own life where I thought there was no way out. But because we kept pushing and pushing and pushing until something caved in, I learned that resilience really does pay off. At the end of the day, sometimes the only option that you have is to keep going. No matter what kind of force may be pressing against you, you cannot afford to give up on yourself. The next lesson that I learned as a result of my disability is that the greatest resource in this world are people. If I didn't have a supportive structure behind me, my life would be a mess. Because I've been surrounded by kind, supportive people who also challenged me to step out of my comfort zone and try out new things, I've been able to live a full, productive, and enjoyable life, which only went on to show me that when you have the right people around you in life, things will go well.